Clark Kellogg, Turner, CBS, Westwood One, NCAA analyst, joining us back here on the program. How you been, Clark?
I'm terrific, Rich. Great to visit with you. How are you doing? Sounds like you're in good form.
Well, you know what? I just get excited seeing performances like that, even though it destroyed my bracket. Just seeing performances like that in games like that last night.
Yeah.
What's the hottest shooting night you ever had? Do you ever have a Ryan Klein type night, Clark?
I think I may have had a couple. I had one in high school, actually, my senior year, I recall, was opening night, and we were expected to be really good, and I was really excited about getting the season going. And, it's amazing kind of what stays on the hard drive of your mind. This is, 40 years ago already, and I can remember distinctly make 22 out of 26 or 20 shots and all variety of shots.
No.
Just floaters, jumpers. I mean, it was just one of those nights, man. They don't come along a bunch, but when they do, they kind of stick in your memory.
And that was amazing. I mean, the step back three to tie the game at 80 that we just replayed right there too, Clark. How dangerous is Purdue, do you think, in the long run here?
Extremely. I mean, when you think about the ability to make threes at that level, he and Carson Edwards both, and then Edwards is a dynamic scorer because of his ability to move without the ball, shoot it off the dribble, drive to the goal. He was uncharacteristically poor from the foul line. That was the only issue with that game. I mean, there were 31 missed free throws between the teams, Rich. Otherwise, I mean, they both shot 50% plus from the floor. Made 27 threes between them on 55 attempts and low turnover games. So then the missed free throws, which actually added to some of the drama and excitement, quite honestly, as we went to the extra session. But it was a really exciting game, the comeback from 18 down, the three-point shooting. I think there was a time in that game, and I'd have to go back and watch it, but I think 7 or 8 baskets in a row that were made were threes between the two teams. I mean, Admiral Schofield, Lamonte Turner on the Tennessee side, and then obviously Klein was in another zone. I mean, he had 22, and then he made 7 of 10 total. But it was really fantastic to watch how those teams went at it down the stretch.
Do you think Carson Edwards was, in fact, fouled in the corner for 3?
I do. The initial look at it head on to Carson, I thought Lamonte had done a nice job of challenging without fouling. But when you got the baseline look, he actually did bump him in the mid-area, lower body, and you've got to protect the shooter according to how the rules are written. A tough call, and it's not ideal. You'd love to see it just be a play on, but that contact warranted the whistle according to how the rule is written, so I had no problem with it after seeing it a second time.
Well, I was watching that on the big screen that they had up in the Honda Center in Anaheim in between the games between Gonzaga's win over Florida State and Texas Tech's demolishing of Michigan, and it was easily the most excited the crowd had gotten all night, even with where everyone of every fan base had gotten in. Everyone was just hanging on it on every moment, and part of that is because after that game was finished up, Texas Tech just took all the air out of Michigan, and the Texas Tech fans that were there last night will never forget that experience. What does Texas Tech do better on defense than everyone else? Because they are the best defensive team left in this tournament, if not the entire country.
Yeah, they've been terrific all year, Rich. And what they do is they're really committed to their scheme. They're very sound, and they can defend the ball individually really well. When you look at Jared Culver and Matt Mooney and Moretti, you watch them, they don't get beat a lot one-on-one. And when they do guard the ball one-on-one, the other guys are in their gaps and really, really tied together well. And then you've got shot blocking presence with Tariq Owens, one of the very best shot blockers in the country. You've got physicality with Odiase. So you've got all of the elements and then a great commitment to it schematically from all of the players. And obviously you've got to give the coaching staff great credit, but they don't get beat. They can guard their man individually really well, and then you combine that with good team schematics and a good team awareness, and they just don't give you much easy, and they turned the water off on the Wolverines in a big way last night.
Yeah, I mean, when you say don't give them anything easy, every time Texas Tech turned the ball over and it was a transition, 3 guys were back. I mean, there wasn't a single opportunity It was
Right.
mauling. It was an absolute mauling. How much of an opportunity do you think Texas Tech has to cut down the nets?
Well, they do because they defend at such a high level, and they found some good rhythm offensively here in the last few weeks. Other than the game against West Virginia, they lost in the Big 12 tournament. They had been playing really well offensively, and you combine those two things, that'll travel wherever you go. Gonzaga showed an awful lot at the defensive end last night and have shown it all season. They got away from them for a time in that St. Mary's game, but other than that, they've been really sound defensively, and they were outstanding defensively last night, the Bulldogs. I give the Bulldogs the edge because they've been much more consistent and the nation's best offensive team all season long. You combine that with the grit they showed defensively last night and on the glass, I think they'll find a way to get enough points or to create a cushion to be able to really make it hard for Texas Tech to come back on them. But if Texas Tech jumps out and gets a good lead early on and then they play through Culver, it could be problematic. But I like the Zags to win just because of their overall offensive balance.
Clark Kellogg here on the Rich Eisen Show. So are we still just all rent payers in Duke's world or UCF?
No, I was never in that camp. I mean, I'm enjoying the ride, and obviously the phenomenon of Zion Williamson is really special. It doesn't come along like that very often when you see a player that is the first of his kind that we've seen. I mean, we've had periods and players, but it's usually every 20 years or so. And I go back to probably Shaq in terms of a player that had you scratching your head. Who is he like? Because he's really unique. And Zion is much that way. Oscar Robertson was that way. Wilt was that way. Kareem was that way. Magic was that way. Pistol Pete in another type of way was that way again.
Those are some serious names, Clark.
You haven't seen.
Clark, those are some serious names. Those are some serious names you're throwing out there.
I'm just saying. I'm not talking about in terms of career. I'm talking about in terms of unique appearance on the scene and production and how they did it. I mean, you think about his speed, his size, his agility, his IQ and savvy, his impact at both ends. You can only count those kind of players on maybe two hands and your feet when you talk about really unique, impactful players that maybe set a trend for that kind of player going forward. LeBron would be in that category. And so, again, I think he's that type of unique presence. And then you factor in his charisma, where he's playing, how he's playing, all of that lends to what has become really must-see television for those that are interested in basketball and unique stories.
And his first two performances statistically as good as Durant's. That's the last time we saw somebody, you want to keep throwing names out there, from the tournament. Yeah. But that talent in the hands of Coach K, who also has guys like Reddish and obviously Barrett at his disposal. We're not paying rent in Duke's world. So who do you like from here on out?
No. I don't think so. I mean, clearly, I believe they should be the favorite, but I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that they automatically win it. The one thing that gives me some pause, Rich, is youth. And anytime you're talking about winning championships, it's very rare that teams, even if they're supremely talented but lack some experience, are able to get it done in a 6-game run to a championship. The 2015 Duke team obviously was carried by freshmen, but there were some key seniors on that team as well, if I'm not mistaken. Quinn Cook, Jefferson. So you've got to have some of that because in the crucible of the one-and-done format, teams can game plan against you. And part of what happened against UCF is that Duke was able to make threes, but UCF did keep them out of transition for the most part and made them go over the top as opposed to through them. And to Duke's credit, R.J. Barrett and Zion and Cam and even Trey Jones made a key bucket. They were able to rise to the occasion, and we'll see if they can continue to do that because I think Virginia Tech, they're number one in fewest points allowed in the paint in the country. Virginia Tech is, despite lack of size. So they did a great job of packing it in and making teams come over the top. And we'll see if Duke is able to do that even with Zion. The last meeting, Virginia Tech didn't have to face Zion.
couple more minutes left with Clark Kellogg, who's a Final Four studio analyst, CBS and Turner, right here on the show. So are you sitting next to Charles watching the Auburn-Carolina game tonight? Are you in his presence for this?
I might have to be a volunteer official between he and Kenny tonight. I might have to separate those guys.
Okay.
I'm actually preparing to do that in some form or fashion. I imagine it'll get pretty intense with those Tigers and Tar Heels going at it for an opportunity to get to the Elite Eight. It should be great fun, though, I'm sure.
What is that like? Can you take a fan in? What's it like sitting with Charles and obviously Kenny for their alma mater games?
It's wonderful because we all love basketball. There's tremendous mutual respect. We've got a great team when you factor in Wally, who has been in there with us, Serbiak, and Greg Gumbel and Ernie Johnson last week, and the folks you don't see. But just those two guys are they're authentic. They're genuine. They're good guys. They love hoops, and they're funny. So it's actually just a really good time to enjoy some laughs while we're talking about college basketball.
So, but you have to get in between them, essentially, at some point. I understand.
I think I might because it's all now. You know, all of the talk leading up to it, Rich, is fun and games, but the real deal happens tonight, and one of those teams is moving on to the Elite Eight, and I think as alums of those schools, I know how I would feel and have felt when the Buckeyes have been in that position in basketball, football, or other sports. It's part of where your heart is when you talk about your alma mater having success. So I know it'll be pretty intense and emotional in there for those guys tonight.
Yeah, we don't talk Ohio State football around here, Clark. You know what I mean? We don't.
Oh, you don't? Okay, my bad.
Yeah.
It's just kind of
we just gloss
on my heart and in my mind on occasion because of being so attached to that place, and I still live in Columbus, so it's not too far from my mind and my tongue.
Great spot, it really is. I'm obviously just having fun. With Houston and Kentucky, how does that match up tonight? Before I let you go here, Clark.
Well, a big question mark is P.J. Washington's availability, and even if he can play, what level of effectiveness will he have? I think Houston is one of the more undervalued and underappreciated teams in the country. They don't do it with great flash, but they do play top-shelf defense. I think in defensive efficiency, when you look at some of the sabermetrics, they may be number one in the country overall in defensive efficiency. I think that's Ken Palm's statistical measure. They rebound at a high level. They've got a great shot maker and scorer in Corey Davis Jr., and although Armani Brooks has struggled in the tournament, he's a 40% three-point shooter on the season and very dangerous. And they got a number of good young players that I think are competitive, that are not afraid, and that really relish this opportunity to surprise the world. I actually picked them to go to the Final Four. I'm actually leaning towards Carolina coming out of there now, but I give Houston a really good chance to prevail in tonight's game.
So who did you have in your bracket before I let you go here?
Well, I had two brackets. I did one on Selection Sunday night on the air once we got done with the selection show, and that was 3 number 1 seeds, Duke. The 3 number 1 seeds, and then Houston was my kind of outlier. I like to try to at least have one team that's maybe a little bit off the radar. And then I did another one that was published on CBSSports.com, presented there, and that was Michigan State with Gonzaga, Houston, and Virginia, with Gonzaga winning it all in both of the brackets.
Look at you. You are very much alive right now, Clark Kellogg, on your brackets. Very much
it can all change in a heartbeat, though, Rich. You know
Tell me about it. Last night was an unmitigated disaster as Tennessee and Michigan go out for me, but that's just me. But that's the beauty of this thing, man, right?
Playing bracketologists, man.
I know that. Hey, Clark, thanks for the call. Have a great time calling. You're calling it on Westwood One, the Final Four, and the National Championship.
I'll be there for the 3 games on the weekend. Yeah, I always look forward to that the last few years. I got my start in radio way back with the Pacers, so it's kind of back to the future, and it's nice to have a full plate those 2 days at the Final Four.
And you are with royalty with John Thompson right next to you. That is royalty, sir.
Great royalty. And Kevin Kugler.
Okay, great.
And then Bill Walton and Jim Gray join us with the halftime. So, no, we got a great crew.
Come on. Are you serious? Jim Gray and Bill Walton together?
Yes. Entertaining, informative. Yes.
Does Bill take Jim on the Deadhead tour with him, too? That would be fantastic. Don't you think that would be great? That'd be fantastic. I love it. And does John have the towel over his shoulder for the broadcast?
No towel.
Okay.
Just a lot of really good insight from years of doing it at a high level. And
for sure.
He's got a pretty good wit about him, too. Nice sense of humor, so it's great fun.
Clark, really appreciate the call. Thanks for the call. We'll chat soon.
Yeah.
You got it.
All right, Rich. Great being with you.
You bet, Sam. That's Clark Kellogg, at Clark Kellogg CBS on Twitter, at CLog with 2 Gs, CBS on Instagram.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.